Dear curious fellows. Today we're talking about the most spectacularly unlucky generals in history. These aren't your typical military failures, these are commanders who had plans so cursed, so monumentally doomed, that you'd think the universe itself was working against them. Grab your popcorn because these disasters are equal parts tragic and hilarious. Let's dive in. Meet Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of Rome's wealthiest men and part of the first triumvirate with Julius Caesar and Pompey. This guy was so rich he could buy entire armies, which is exactly what he did. But here's the thing, having money doesn't mean you have military sense, and Crassus was about to prove that in the most painful way possible. In 53 BC, Crassus decided he wanted military glory to match his massive wallet, so he invaded Parthia, modern-day Iran, with about 40,000 Roman soldiers. His advisors warned him not to cross the desert. Local guides offered better routes. Everyone with half a brain cell told him this was a terrible idea. But Crassus, drunk on confidence and probably counting his gold coins, ignored them all and marched his army straight into the scorching Mesopotamian desert. The Battle of Carrhae was an absolute massacre. The Parthians, master horseback archers, surrounded the Romans and just peppered them with arrows from a distance. Crassus's heavy infantry couldn't even reach the enemy to fight back. It was like bringing a knife to a gunfight, except the knife is made of solid gold and you're too stubborn to drop it. Around 20,000 Romans died, and Crassus himself was killed during failed peace negotiations. It gets worse. Legend says the Parthians poured molten gold down his throat after death, mocking his greed. Whether that's true or propaganda doesn't really matter, because the imagery is perfect. Let's fast forward to 1893 and meet Vice Admiral Sir George Tryon of the British Royal Navy. This man was experienced, decorated, and highly respected. He was also about to give an order so catastrophically stupid that it would sink his own flagship and kill himself in the process. And the wildest part? Everyone knew it was a bad idea except him. Tryon was commanding the Mediterranean fleet during naval exercises off the coast of Lebanon. He decided to show off a fancy maneuver where two columns of ships would turn inward toward each other, then reverse course in a display of precision. Cool idea, right? Except there was one tiny problem: the ships needed more space than Tryon had calculated. His second-in-command, Rear Admiral Markham, immediately spotted the error and even questioned the order. Other officers were confused and concerned. But Tryon, perhaps having too much faith in his own genius, insisted the maneuver continue. The result was as predictable as it was horrifying. HMS Victoria, Tryon's flagship, turned directly into the path of HMS Camperdown. The two massive battleships collided in broad daylight, in calm seas, during a peacetime exercise. Victoria's hull was ripped open, and she began sinking immediately. As the ship went down, Tryon reportedly said, "It's all my fault," which, doesn't really help at that point. He went down with the ship along with 358 sailors who died because their admiral couldn't do basic math. What makes this even more absurd is that this wasn't a heat-of-battle decision or a split-second judgment call under enemy fire. This was a practice exercise with plenty of time to think. Multiple people questioned him, and he had every opportunity to say, "You know what, maybe you're right, let's not crash these giant expensive warships into each other." But nope. Pride, stubbornness, or whatever you want to call it led to one of the most preventable naval disasters in history. Finally, we arrive at Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer, the poster child for military overconfidence. You probably know how this story ends: the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876, also called Custer's Last Stand. But what you might not know is just how many warnings Custer ignored before leading his men into what became one of the most famous defeats in American military history. Custer was hunting down Lakota and Cheyenne warriors in Montana Territory. His scouts told him there was a massive Native American encampment ahead, possibly the largest gathering they'd ever seen. His Crow scouts literally said the enemy force was too large to fight and begged him to wait for reinforcements. Custer had the option to wait for additional troops who were just a day or two away. But Custer, worried that the glory would go to someone else and desperate for a big victory to boost his political career, decided to attack immediately with just his 7th Cavalry. Then he made it worse by splitting his already outnumbered force into 3 groups. This is textbook what not to do in military strategy. When you're already outnumbered, you don't divide your forces and make yourself even weaker. But Custer was so confident in his abilities and so dismissive of his Native American opponents that he genuinely believed he could win. He even refused to take Gatling guns because he thought they'd slow him down, which is like refusing a bulletproof vest because it's not fashionable. The result was a complete annihilation. Custer and all 268 men directly under his command were killed. The combined forces of Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors, led by chiefs like Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, completely overwhelmed the divided cavalry units. Custer's last stand lasted maybe an hour, and it wasn't the heroic struggle that paintings and movies later depicted. It was a slaughter born of arrogance, poor planning, and ignoring literally everyone who tried to give him good advice. Custer wanted to be a hero so badly that he got his entire battalion killed and became famous for all the wrong reasons.